Hey, thank you so much for joining us. This is That Pharmacist Show with Dr. Mariko.
Dr. Shamita.
Dr. Tiff.
And Dr. LaQuoya.
Today, Dr. LaQuoya is not today, but upcoming. She'll have an upcoming event, and we're going to talk about her event and how it could potentially affect the pharmacy industry and world and what implications it has for you. So let's go ahead and get started.
So Dr. Q, could you please start off by just giving us a little bit of background on this seminar and then let us know what motivated you to create this seminar?
So Dr. Shamita, thank you so much for that question. I am so honored to discuss the Grace Culture 5-day virtual summit for pharmacy leaders. Now, by the time you see this episode, we may be in the middle of the week, but have no fear, you can still join it. So the Grace Culture Virtual Summit for Pharmacy Leaders is really an opportunity for us all to come together and discuss what are the challenges that we are seeing, observing, experiencing in our pharmacy departments. I have a story myself. We'll probably get a little bit into that story on this episode, but in reality, we're all having an experience all the time. And we don't know what other people's experiences are, but we have to understand that we all have an effect on other people. Whatever I say, whatever I do, it is impacting someone else around me. And for pharmacy leaders, that is particularly important because we know that we are in a stressful environment. We're in an environment where people are understaffed, they are undervalued, and they are overworked. And with our current mental health crisis, and then we put on top of that the fact that we have technicians who are exiting the pharmaceutical industry at a faster rate than we have people actually joining the pharmaceutical industry, we are on the road to disaster because our base is not there. So the Grace Culture Pharmacy Summit is really for pharmacy leadership to come together. Let's discuss the challenges that we currently are seeing in our environment. And then and only then can we start to really figure out what are some beneficial solutions that's going to make an impact immediately.
So how long has this been in the works, this planning? This sounds like it's a big event.
It is a big event for me, particularly because it is the time that I'm really launching. But when you say how long has this been in planning, I would have to say pretty much all my life, Dr. Shamita. It really has. It is my purpose. It is my mission. It's my calling, something I really didn't even know in reality, that was my calling until I actually went through this really painful and tough experience over the last 5 years of practicing in the state of North Carolina. I have been through quite the journey in my entire pharmacy career, but nothing as impactful as what I went through from about 2016 to September 11th of 2020, when I exited my last position in pharmacy leadership. That's when it really launched for me because I had to really figure out what was the next step in my journey, but still trying to heal from the past experience and that PTSD. And what I figured out was what helped me grow and thrive through my experience was grace. It was the grace of God. It was me accepting the grace of God and then also extending that grace to people who did not like how I looked. They didn't like how I talked. They didn't like how I dressed. They didn't like, it was just so much there. And no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. But when I realized that I am enough because God says who I am, and that I've been given grace to extend grace to others, he told me that my role and my mission and purpose is to show people what grace looks like. And so this event, while the event has been really in the planning for about 3 months, my entire journey and my life and my career has really prepared me to step into where I am today.
Dr. LaKoya, can you talk about your painful experience that you referenced?
Well, Dr. Mariko, we could be here all day talking about my painful experience, but let me just tell you, I'm on Wednesday of the summit, which is March 23rd, I will be sharing more about my experience and what has brought me here today. I've also written a book that you can find on Kindle. It's called How Racism Manifests, RXACISM. That talks a little bit more about my journey as well. But what I will have to say here, like just really high level, because I don't want to like really take up too much time, is just understanding that I walked into a toxic environment. I knew when I walked in, there were some challenges, but I didn't know just how deep those challenges were and how deep rooted the toxicity was until about 2 years into it. For 2 years, I like to say I was fighting with the people, for the people, and against the people. I walked into an environment where people were struggling with PTSD because they had a massive amount of layoffs the year before. But when I walked in, it was like it just happened yesterday.
And when you say you walked in, you're talking about into a pharmacy.
Yes. When I walked into my leadership position.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When I walked into my position, the team had just went through a huge round of layoffs. And so that happened in 2015. In the summer of 2015, I walked into this department in November of 2016. And the way the people talked about this event of this massive layoffs was like it had just happened the day before. And, you know, for a while, I walked around on eggshells for about a year because they were so traumatized. And the traumatization that they had experienced was such that it really didn't matter what you did or what you said. They had no trust in leadership anymore, none. And so I had to walk that journey in that line. And then add on top of that, it was a lack of support. First, it was a lack of support because we didn't have leadership to really be there. Our bandwidth was so small. I did meet a really great leader that became really like a mentor to me, but her bandwidth was even, very small as well. And so from a staffing numbers, I had 63 direct reports. That span of control is absolutely ridiculous. Like no one can truly manage 63 people, right? Effectively.
Personalities too.
Right. 63 different personalities. And when you're in middle management, you're not just managing down, you're managing up and across, right? So I didn't have any support managing down because they didn't trust leadership anyway, let alone a Black woman stepping into this department and telling them what they need to do and what changes need to happen. So I didn't have that support. I didn't have the support across because I had a manager that really, quite frankly, did as she pleased, and there was no accountability there. And then up the chain, because I communicated these challenges that I was having in the department and what the culture was made of in the department, I communicated those challenges up and down the ladder. So all the way to the senior level of leadership, and there still was no support. It was like, LaKoya is just talking. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Now,
can I interject?
Mm-hmm.
Coming into, it's a little, you have a different lens coming into that environment. They've been in it. So for them, it's like, this is what it is. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And when you come in as a new person, you tend to see things that others might not have recognized because they're used to living in it. It's normalized for them. I just want to.
No, it's a very good point, Tiff, because as I was going through that experience, and I realized then there are some normal behaviors that is just deep rooted in the culture of pharmacy. Some of this stuff is normalized. And that's the stuff that I really want to bring out in this Grace Culture Summit, and that I bring out in my book, that while I had this experience, and some of those experiences that I had were directly attached to my race, there are some things that I experienced that had nothing to do with me being a Black woman. There were some things I experienced that just is the culture of pharmacy. So for instance, some of those things that keep us as people of color, people in leadership at the levels that we are at, is because higher leadership in pharmacy will sometimes create positions for specific individuals, right? And if you don't have the connections to some of the higher leadership, then you're not even looked at as being competent enough or qualified enough for those specific roles. So we've created roles for people, specifically those who are in our circle, so to speak, and how that manifests is you see someone get 2 or 3 different positions within 2 or 3 years, higher levels of positions, and you never even knew the position existed.